Now, what does this data look like that we collect? Well, we're going to categorize the data, actually group the data into two different types of variables, right? This data comes from two different types of variables. So go back to that analogy I gave you of when asking somebody when you're getting to know them, first date, or you're trying to learn about someone, you ask them questions, how old are you? Right? That is a numerical answer, right? So we would call that, right, because this value varies from person to person, we would call the age of somebody a variable, a quantitative variable, versus we would say, what color hair do you have? That would be what we call a categorical variable. The color of hair of people, right, vary from person to person, variable, and hence we have a categorical variable. So that's what we're going to analyze in statistics. We end up using those two types, and we have to be aware of those. Another word for categorical variable sometimes is qualitative, like quality, qualitative data. But categorical data are generally described by words or letters, right? So something to think about as you now know that statistics is the study of us. What we use to study us is data. The data comes in two forms, qualitative or quantitative forms, right? Quantitative meaning the numbers, right? Quantitative data are the result of counting or measuring something, how tall somebody is, the amount of money in your bank account, how much gas do you have in your car, how many miles is it from your house to school, right? Those are all values that vary from person to person, and hence we would call those variables. Further, when we think about quantitative variables, we have two different types of quantitative variables right here, quantitative data. We call either discrete or continuous. Discrete data, right, take on a certain, these are data that take only a certain numerical. There's like a limited amount of options, like your shoe size would be a discrete. It's a number, but it's a discrete quantitative variable versus something where there's an infinite amount of values for a variable, and that would be continuous. Again, it takes a little bit of time looking at that. You can go ahead and read, and then on your homework get a sense of the difference between those two, a discrete quantitative variable and a continuous quantitative variable. But you could see continuous means that there's an infinite number of outcomes possible versus a discrete where there's only a certain amount of outcomes possible, but they're both numbers. And then lastly, we have a nice little diagram for us to think about categorical, numerical, or quantitative, qualitative. Again, I end up using both terms in both cases for both types. So get used to categorical or qualitative, qualities, quantitative or numerical. You got some examples here. And so as we look at these here, it ends with this final example of these variables in which type. The first one's quantitative, categorical, your political party, or qualitative. And your social security number is a tricky one. It's a number, but number doesn't have any value. I can't do any calculation on it, so technically it's what we call an identifier. So that would fall into a categorical value. It's qualitative. It's not a number that we can do calculations on.